It happened so fast that no one even had time to breathe. One moment, the chemistry lab buzzed with the usual chatter of teenagers. The next, a student named Jackson Pierce had his hand wrapped tightly around Miss Eleanor Vance's throat. He slammed her hard against the wall. The glass beakers rattled and gas hissed from an open valve. Everyone in the room froze, except for Miss Vance. The black woman's eyes did not show a single ounce of fear. She did not beg for help. Her eyes locked onto Jackson. They were sharp, steady, and entirely unshaken. It was as if she had stared down danger far greater than this, the kind of danger that made his violent outburst look like absolute child's play. In the next 5 seconds, something happened that would end Jackson's future. It would turn the entire school upside down and make everyone in that room rethink who Miss Vance really was. The first rays of the morning sun slipped weakly through the tall glass windows of Lincoln High. Students trudged inside, their conversations filling the hallways. To most, it was just another ordinary day in the endless cycle of classes. But on the second floor, inside the chemistry lab, something was about to unfold that none of them would ever forget. It was a chain of events that would completely ruin reputations and shatter an entitled teenager's arrogance. It would reveal the startling, hidden past of a black woman who, until that exact moment, appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary teacher. Her name was Miss Eleanor Vance, the strict new chemistry teacher. She commanded absolute silence from the moment she entered a room. She was in her mid-30s, with a sharp gaze and a calm, calculating presence that kept her students constantly on edge. Whispers followed her through the halls. They said she was too strict, too cold, and far too mysterious. Her appearance only added to the talk. She wore long sleeves, even in summer, and had the perfect posture of a trained soldier. Her eyes seemed to read minds. A few students whispered that she had lived a completely different life before arriving at Lincoln High. What none of them knew was that those rumors were not as far-fetched as they seemed. But every classroom has one. The bully, the student who thinks he is untouchable, that rules don't apply to him, and that teachers are beneath him. At Lincoln High, that student was Jackson Pierce. He was the spoiled son of a wealthy businessman who practically owned half the city. Jackson walked the halls like he owned them too. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and was always wearing a smug, arrogant grin on his face. He constantly mocked weaker students, shoved kids into lockers, and cheated on tests without any fear of consequences. Teachers usually tolerated him or looked the other way because they didn't want to risk crossing his father's influence. But Miss Vance was entirely different. She didn't stumble when he mocked her lessons. She didn't flinch when he raised his voice. Instead, she met him with eyes so piercing that for the first time in his life, Jackson felt uneasy. Jackson Pierce absolutely hated feeling uneasy. That feeling was exactly why, on a quiet Thursday morning in the chemistry lab, things began to spiral out of control. The class had been busy with a complex experiment. The air was heavily filled with the acrid scent of chemicals. At the back of the room, Jackson leaned lazily against his workstation. His arms were folded across his chest, and his friends were snickering quietly at his side. His smirk grew as he intentionally raised his voice so the entire class could hear him. "Hey, Miss Vance," he sneered. "Are you really a teacher, or just playing dress-up to cover the rent?" Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Everyone knew Jackson's cruel routine: provoke, mock, and humiliate until the target finally broke. But Miss Vance didn't give him the satisfaction. Without even glancing in his direction, she responded evenly. "Focus on your experiment, Jackson. Your solution is about to overheat." The calm, professional dismissal landed harder than any insult ever could. Jackson's jaw tightened angrily. He was not used to people brushing him off. Normally, teachers stammered or simply gave in to him. But she had shut him down completely with a single sentence. "Don't tell me what to do," he snapped, his voice cutting through the chatter. "You're not my boss. My dad pays your salary. Have you ever seen someone so drunk on power that they believe their parents' money gives them control over everyone else? What would you do if you were challenged in front of a full classroom? Before we go any further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. If you believe no amount of wealth should excuse arrogance, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for stories that prove respect is earned, not bought. The room went dead silent. A few students tried to cover their grins, while others simply froze, waiting to see how Miss Vance would respond. She turned around slowly, her sharp eyes locking right onto Jackson. That stare was colder than ice and sharper than steel. He shifted his weight, suddenly feeling incredibly uncomfortable, but forced a cocky grin to hide it. "You might believe your father's money controls this school," she said. Her tone was steady and deliberate, with each word carrying heavy weight. But in this classroom, science and discipline rule. "Sit down." Her voice carried a finality that felt absolutely immovable. It was like a brick wall Jackson couldn't push through. For a brief second, his confidence faltered, his heartbeat skipping. But pride was poison, and Jackson had swallowed far too much of it over the years. His friends were watching him. The entire class was watching. He felt he couldn't back down now. With an angry scowl, he slammed his notebook shut and stood up. "Or what?" he demanded, stepping aggressively closer. "What are you going to do if I don't sit down?" Her voice didn't waver, and it didn't rise. But there was a highly dangerous edge in it. It was something forged in fire and experience that made several students straighten up. Jackson, completely blinded by arrogance, mistook her calm composure for weakness. His temper flared, and in a reckless burst of defiance, he crossed a line no student should ever even think of crossing. He lunged forward, grabbed Miss Vance violently by the throat, and slammed her hard against the heavy lab counter. A chorus of gasps filled the room. Chairs screeched against the floor as students stood up in pure shock. A few fumbled for their phones, but for that single heartbeat, time itself seemed to freeze. Jackson's hand pressed tightly against her neck, his face twisted in smug triumph. "What now, huh?" he spat, his grip tightening. "What are you going to do now?" But then, something shifted. Miss Vance's eyes didn't widen in fear. Instead, they narrowed. In that instant, the facade of the quiet black teacher completely dissolved. What stood before them was something far more formidable. Years of intense training, discipline, and combat buried beneath her calm surface surged to life. Her hand snapped upward like lightning, seizing Jackson's wrist in a grip of iron. His smirk faltered, and deep unease flashed across his face. Before he could even react, her other hand struck his elbow, bending it in a direction nature never intended. A strangled cry tore from his throat as pain shot through him. His hold weakened instantly. In one swift, brutal motion, she twisted free, spun behind him, and locked his arm tightly behind his back. Jackson's body slammed face first against the counter with a resounding thud. The impact echoed through the lab like thunder. The room froze. Every student was wide-eyed, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. Miss Vance hadn't simply defended herself against a student. She had moved with a deadly precision and force that no ordinary teacher could have possessed. The way she effortlessly held him down spoke of tactical training and experience that none of them could even fathom. Leaning close to his ear, her voice dropped to a deadly whisper that carried across the heavy silence. "You don't know who you are dealing with." Jackson thrashed, but the harder he fought, the tighter her hold became. His friends stayed rooted in their spots, pure fear etched on their faces. Nobody dared to move a muscle. For the first time in his entire life, Jackson Pierce was not the one in control of the situation. He was prey, caught firmly in the grip of a predator he hadn't even seen coming. "Apologize." The single word cracked through the air like a whip. Miss Vance's tone was incredibly low, but it carried absolute authority. Jackson groaned, squirming under her painful grip, but the pressure on his arm only grew much tighter. "Say it," she ordered again, her voice edged with cold steel. The boy who had spent years terrorizing classmates was trembling. He was trembling now, sweat rolling down his temple. His arrogance had been completely stripped away in seconds. I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice breaking pathetically. "I'm sorry." Only then did Miss Vance release him. With a shove, she pushed him forward. Jackson stumbled, clutching his aching arm, his once confident face totally pale and humiliated. The classroom stayed perfectly silent. No one dared laugh. No one even dared whisper. Every eye was completely fixed on her. They stared at the black woman who had stood against Jackson Pierce and dismantled him with terrifying precision. Miss Vance adjusted the cuffs of her blouse calmly. She stood tall once more, her expression perfectly controlled. But in her eyes, something darker stirred. It was a storm hinting at a past none of them could comprehend. She looked at the stunned students and said simply, "Class dismissed." At first, nobody moved. Then slowly, one by one, students gathered their books and slipped out of the room. Their glances darted nervously between Jackson, still nursing his arm, and Miss Vance, who stood like a soldier returning to rest. That day, whispers spread through Lincoln High like wildfire. The teacher wasn't just a teacher. She was something else entirely. She was something dangerous. Jackson Pierce, the untouchable bully, had been broken in front of everyone. And it hadn't taken empty threats or begging. It had taken skill, precision, and a presence that could not be ignored. Deep inside, Jackson knew his life had just changed in a way he could never undo. His arrogance and his shield of power had been completely shattered by the one person he underestimated. Because Miss Eleanor Vance's past wasn't a rumor at all. It was real. And that reality had just crushed him. Moments like this remind us that money can certainly buy influence, but it can never buy true respect. Respect isn't inherited, and it isn't bought. It must be earned. Wealth can silence some people and bend a few rules, but it cannot protect you forever. Eventually, everyone meets someone who cannot be bought or bullied, and that is when the truth comes out. If you've ever seen someone like that finally get humbled, you know it's a lesson they never forget. Like this video and subscribe to Story Arc for more amazing stories that prove some lessons can only be learned the hard way. See you on the next one.